This is session 10 of Psalm 23. Helps is the idea that we come alongside to help one another when we're in difficult times, when things are not rolling along as we think they should. We can fall into various times. You know, you who are spiritual, restore such a one. Brethren, when somebody's overtaken in a fault or a trouble, Galatians 6. So we can find ourselves in difficult times, mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually. And, the believers need to come alongside and to help to encourage. And I think Psalm 23 is a great encouragement. So we're going through Psalm 23 here just to use it as a tool for God to use to restore a soul. Let me just read some thoughts. This is from Enduring Word about Psalm 23. It says, Psalm 23 has charmed more griefs to rest in all the philosophy of the world. It has remanded to their dungeon more felon thoughts, more black thoughts, more thieving sorrows than the sands of the sea. It has comforted the noble host of the poor. It's sung courage to armies. It's poured balm and comfort into the sick heart of captives and of widows. Dying soldiers have died easier as they read to them. Ghastly hospitals have been illuminated. It's visited the prisoner, broken his chains, and just so forth. And he talks about, this is by James Montgomery Boyce, says, millions of people have memorized this psalm, even those who have learned a few other scripture portions. Ministers have used it to comfort people who are going through severe personal trials, suffering illnesses, or dying. For some, the words of this psalm have been the last they ever uttered in this life. It is a very powerful and it's very well known, but sometimes well known doesn't mean that we grasp it and we understand the many principles and the many promises therein. So we're working on that. So let me read it again, and then we'll work on some more ideas here. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So we're coming to our 10th idea here. We started off with the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. So here's number 10. And number 10 is, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Now, just think about little sheep. We're talking about the Lord is my shepherd and we're sheep. Routinely, the shepherd has to move his sheep from a field to another field. And oftentimes, those pastures, those meadows, there's a choke point between them. And so in some sense, what's happening here in, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we're moving from this pasture to this pasture, and you're going through a narrow chasm or heavy timber all the way up to just a narrow spot. I mean, what's in that timber? Enemies, trouble? I mean, I don't know, The little sheep is being led through a valley with the shadow of death. Now, let me just back this thing up. He says he makes me lie down, which we talked about. We're satisfied. We've been fed. We're protected. Then we have peace by still waters. He restores my soul. I have renewed confidence. All these things. So my health is good. My mental, emotional, physical health is good. And then he leads me because he's going to take me to a higher level. He's going to take me to a higher pasture. This little pasture seems fine, but the shepherd knows that it's being depleted. I need to go to a higher one. And the good shepherd, Jesus, moves us to different pastures because he's growing us. He's going to move us to a place where the grass is going to be green while this grass is going to dry up. Maybe it's lower and there's not as many rains in the summer, so it's going to dry up. So he knows what's best. But he leads me. But he doesn't lead me until I'm first, lie down and I've fed and I'm content and I'm protected and I am still waters. I'm at peace. I'm healthy in many ways. Another thing about this, so he's moving them in this chapter. He's moving them in the middle of life. Now we often have this. We do this at a funeral, right? Because the shadow of death, and that's valid. But you also could say this is happening in the middle of life. I mean, middle of life, God is taking them through a challenge. He's going to grow them. He's going to move them to a higher spiritual level. So it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. All right, just a few things there. I mean, shadows. Shadows say there's a reality, but shadows cannot hurt you. I mean, there's a reality over there. There's something causing that. There's something kind of blocking the sun, right? So you don't have direct access to the sun. So there's a shadow. But shadows, they can't hurt you. They just tell you there's a reality there. Valleys can be rich and rich with soil and stuff, but valleys can also become choke points, right? And death. Death is separation. So all of a sudden now, up to this point, things have been really pretty hunky-dory, right? But now all of a sudden, things are not so hunky-dory. Things are troubled. There's issues. I've got pain. I've got loss. Pink slip, divorce, a wayward child, a death, cancer, right? All of a sudden, I mean, look, the Lord is my shepherd, and He's been one. He makes me. He leads me. He restores me. He guides me. He's been my wisdom, and it's all been great until now. And now there's a shift here. I mean, that's just life, right? We can be rolling along in so many ways, and all of a sudden things go south. And we say, whoa, what just happened? Well, don't take shock in that. It's kind of just the way life is. But right here in Psalm 23, there it is again. Life all of a sudden is sideways. Life all of a sudden is upside down. Well, let me just give you maybe 4 verses here, just to kind of help build a case for how we cope with this and how we walk with this. First of all, there's a number of passages I could use, but that say that this should not be surprising. Yea, all who are godly will suffer persecution, 2 Timothy 3:12. But listen to this one. In Philippians chapter 1, he says, it has not only been granted on behalf of Christ, not only to believe in Him, but also to suffer for His name's sake. So part of it, I mean, we identify with Jesus. They rejected Him. The Romans hated Him. The Jews were away with Him. And He's executed, right? Well, we're identifying with what Rome deemed was a criminal and what the Jews deemed was a heretic, right? We're identifying with Him. So we should not be surprised that we're going to have valleys, we're going to have shadows, and we're going to have times of death. I mean, just dying to my dream and dying to, I was going to be the CEO of the company, and all of a sudden I'm on the street, those kinds of things. So we should not be surprised by that. Psalm 34:19 says, and there's a couple others in New Testament, Paul talks about it in 2 Timothy too, but it says this, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. That doesn't mean you don't have them, but He'll deliver you from them, right? So we realize they're temporary. We realize an affliction, and it may be all the way to a physical death, but afflictions are temporary. They mark us as being His, but they're temporary. He delivers us. And deliverance, again, may be death where you go to be with Him, right? But it could be deliverance back to more of this life here. But God delivers His people, even though it looks very impossible to them. Here's another one. In Psalm 119, David says, it was good that I was afflicted. It's good that I went through the valley. It's good that I went through a shadow and at times, because he says, that I may learn your statutes. So why does God take us into a valley? Why does God take us into the shadows? Why does God do that? Because God's teaching us. He's teaching us to trust Him. He's teaching us to cling to His Word, cling to His promises. And these next phrases in Psalm 23 are going to help us understand that. But he said, it was good for me. This is Psalm 119:71. It was good that I was afflicted, that I may learn your statutes. Before I was afflicted, verse 67, before I was afflicted, I went astray. Okay, but now I keep your word. You are good and do good. So God was good in Him being afflicted. Can we come to the point where we say, this valley, this shadow, this time of death is from a good God? Because He said, it keeps me from going astray and it helps me learn His word. So there's value in shadows and valleys and even in times of death. And one more in Romans chapter 8, verse 18. Paul says, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory which shall be revealed in us. Wow. So got to get you through this. And the glory on the other side, the eternal glory, is this just pales to nothingness compared to that glory. He says, it's not worthy to be compared. So again, here's the point. You might find yourself in a valley. You find yourself in shadows and dark, and you're not quite sure what's going on. You find yourself in a time of death. There's hope. There's help. God's allowed it. God's using it. And we'll look at some pieces, some promises coming up in those next phrases right behind this. But don't be shocked by this. God's not shocked by it. God is using this. God's up to something in your life. Okay. So we'll work in some more of these, but may Psalm 23 become personal to you. May Psalm 23 become powerful to you. May God use it to help you find victory in life to His glory. All right? Until next time.